A hand moves across shadow. The chess piece slides, silent against polished wood. Light catches the carved details. A king, perhaps, or a knight. But in this game, the pieces that matter aren't the ones you see. They're the invisible fractures running through every player's soul. Watch closely now. See how she touches her wedding ring when speaking of loyalty. Notice how his voice hardens discussing success, as if rehearsing lines he doesn't quite believe. Every human carries a wound they've learned to hide, a fear they've masked with carefully constructed confidence. Like hairline cracks in precious porcelain, these flaws remain invisible until pressure reveals them. The powerful know this. They see the strings that make humans dance, not with malice, but with the calm clarity of one who has studied the machinery of hearts. That businessman projecting unshakable authority. Watch his eyes when criticism strikes. The socialite radiating effortless charm. Ain't notice how her laughter changes when status feels threatened. We all carry these wounds, these secret chambers where doubt bleeds through certainty. Machiavelli wasn't merely teaching politics when he walked Florence's shadowed streets. He was excavating human nature. How we fool ourselves first, then others. How truth leaks through our lives like water through stone. How our deepest fears become puppet strings in hands skilled enough to spot them. Jung understood this mechanism. He called it the persona. That mask we craft for survival, polished by years of social pressure. We wear it so long we forget it's there. But the powerful see it clearly. How the mask grows rigid precisely where the wound lies beneath. The more perfectly someone maintains their persona, the more certainly it hides profound weakness. Nietzsche saw deeper still. The herd, he named them. Those who never question their masks, who wear what society demands without asking why. But even in the herd, truth betrays itself. Watch long enough and you'll see it. In charity that reeks of guilt, in strength that protests too loudly its own power, in confidence that shatters at the slightest touch. The chess piece moves again. Shadow shifts. This is not a game of strength against strength. This is a game of seeing what others hide from themselves. Consider how a skilled therapist reads their patient. Not just the words spoken, but the subtle shifts in tone when certain topics arise. The slight tension in shoulders when approaching truth. The way silence makes them fidget, as if their own thoughts were poison. These are not mere habits. They are confessions written in flesh and gesture. Schopenhauer knew this as suffering's root, our endless flight from truth, our desperate clinging to comfortable lies. We build elaborate defenses against pain, never realizing these defenses become maps for those who know how to read them. Every fortress points to what it protects. Every mask outlines precisely what it hides. But beware. To master this art is to stare into your own abyss. You cannot learn to spot weakness in others without first facing it in yourself. This is where most turn back. It's easier to maintain illusions, to focus only on others' flaws, while denying our own. Yet true power comes not from pretending perfection, but from having faced your own depths. Kierkegaard called this the sickness unto death, that moment when we realize our own fundamental brokenness. But from this despair, genuine strength emerges, not the brittle strength of denial, but the fluid power of one who has seen their own shadow and survived. The chessboard remains, pieces arranged in eternal opposition, but now you begin to see differently. Every move reveals not just strategy, but psychology. Every defense suggests a weakness. Every attack betrays a fear. This is not manipulation. It is perception. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. Alan Watts would recognize this paradox. In learning to see through others, we must first become transparent to ourselves. The illusion of the separate, perfect self must shatter before genuine vision emerges. Only then can we read the human heart, not with judgment, but with understanding. And so the game continues. Beneath fluorescent lights and shadow, masks shine and secrets whisper. But now you understand. True power lies not in hiding weakness, but in seeing it clearly, first in yourself, then in everything. Another piece moves. Shadow shifts again. The game deepens. Watch them in any meeting room, any social gathering, any arena of power. See how they arrange themselves, how they perform their strength. The aggressive CEO commanding attention. Social influencer, radiating unshakable confidence. The moral crusader standing fierce with conviction, each a masterclass in the theater of power. But look closer. Something haunting lies beneath these displays. Jung understood this mechanism deeply, called it the persona, our social armor, carefully forged in the fires of expectation. But these masks aren't random costumes we choose for mere decoration. They're compensations unconsciously crafted to protect our deepest wounds. The truly powerful know this secret. The louder someone broadcasts strength, the more clearly they outline their weakness. It's mathematics in reverse. Every display points back to what it tries to deny. Like a photo negative, the mask reveals precisely what it intends to hide. Watch that CEO again. Notice how his voice rises when challenged, how aggression flares fastest when his competence is questioned. That's not confidence you're seeing, it's compensation. Behind every thundering command lies a whispered fear of inadequacy. The more forcefully he asserts control, the more clearly you can read the terror of powerlessness beneath. The social butterfly, always at the center, always connecting, always on. What drives this perpetual performance? Look carefully at her eyes in moments of silence. There's a haunted quality there, a deep fear of being alone, of being unseen. The bigger the social web she weaves, the more obvious the underlying void she's trying to fill. This was Machiavelli's first and deepest insight. It's not about wielding power, but about seeing through its pretense. He walked through Florence's courts and saw not strength, but patterns of compensation. The most aggressive courtiers were the most frightened. The loudest declarations of loyalty masked the deepest treachery. The most elaborate displays of wealth betrayed the deepest poverty of spirit. Schopenhauer would recognize this pattern, humans eternally fleeing from their own emptiness, creating ever more elaborate displays to convince themselves they're solid. But the very intensity of the performance betrays its hollowness. Like a building with a weak foundation, the higher they build their facade, the more unstable it becomes. Notice the moral crusader, righteous with unshakable conviction. See how quickly anger flares at the slightest challenge to their beliefs. Nietzsche saw this clearly. The louder someone proclaims their moral purity, the darker the shadow they're trying to deny. Their fierce certainty isn't strength. It's armor against their own doubts, their own unacknowledged darkness. The patterns become clear once you know how to read them. The perpetually busy are running from emptiness. The constantly helping are fleeing their own need. The never vulnerable are drowning in fear. The always strong are compensating for profound weakness. This is what Kierkegaard meant by despair, not simple sadness, but the elaborate structures we build to hide from ourselves. The greater the despair, the more impressive the facade constructed to deny it. Yet to careful eyes, these very structures become maps leading back to the wound they conceal. But here lies the double-edged sword of this perception. To truly see through others is to eventually see through yourself. You begin to catch your own compensations, your own elaborate performances. The masks you thought were your face start feeling heavy in your hands. Alan Watts warned of this. The very act of trying to appear strong betrays a fundamental insecurity about one's own nature. True power doesn't need to convince anyone. It simply is. The more we learn to see through pretense in others, the more our own pretenses become uncomfortably visible. This sight comes with both responsibility and risk. To see these patterns is to hold a kind of power. The power of perception that cuts through social theater. But it also demands honesty about your own masks, your own compensations, your own elaborate architectures of denial. The meeting room continues its performance. Masks shine under fluorescent lights. Power plays out its ancient dance. But now you see differently. Every assertion of strength suggests a specific weakness. Every display of certainty points to particular doubts. Every mask becomes a map leading back to what it tries to hide. This isn't cynicism. It's clarity. This isn't judgment. It's recognition. Watch closely now. Not what they display, but what they defend. Not what they proclaim, but what they protect. Every strength tells a story of weakness. Every virtue whispers of a hidden vice. Machiavelli walked through Renaissance courts and saw what Jung would later map in his psychology. Humans are living contradictions. We don't simply have qualities, we have compensations. Each display of character points back to its shadow twin, like a compass needle trembling toward a buried truth. The powerful understand this language. They don't focus on the surface theater, the practiced smiles, the polished presentations. the carefully curated strengths. Instead, they study what lies beneath, the subtle tells, the unconscious patterns, the places where performance grows too perfect to be real. Watch the overly generous colleague. See how quickly she offers help, how desperately she seeks to be needed. That's not pure altruism you're witnessing. It's a pattern of compensation. Beneath that endless giving often lies a deep wound of unworthiness, a hunger for approval that can never quite be filled. The more someone needs to be seen as generous, the more clearly you can read their fear of being worthless. Notice the perpetually helpful friend, always solving others' problems. It's always available, always involved in everyone else's journey. Look closer. There's avoidance beneath that virtue. The more someone fixes others' lives, the more likely they're fleeing from their own.
Ow.
Their constant helping isn't just kindness, it's a sophisticated escape from personal pain. Study the eternally optimistic leader, the one who never acknowledges darkness, who transforms every problem into opportunity, who maintains unshakable positivity. That's not natural joy you're seeing. It's psychological armor. The brighter the light someone projects, the deeper the shadow they're running from. Their optimism isn't strength. It's a shield against unnamed despair. These aren't random patterns or psychological mathematics. The more rigid the virtue, the deeper the repressed vice, the louder the strength, the more fragile its foundation, the more perfect the mask. The more painful the wound it hides. Jung called this the shadow principle. Whatever we reject in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground. But like water pressure beneath stone, it forces its way out through unconscious patterns. The shadow always speaks, even when we try to silence it. Schopenhauer recognized this in human suffering. Our most pronounced qualities often develop as defenses against specific pains. The more someone performs a particular strength, the more clearly they reveal the wound that birthed it. Power lies in reading these wounds, not to exploit them, but to understand the human machinery beneath social theater. This isn't manipulation. It's psychological literacy. Just as reading words reveals meaning in books, reading compensation patterns reveals truth in human nature. The perpetually strong show you where they feel weak. The eternally moral show you where they fear darkness. The always perfect show you where they're broken. Kierkegaard understood this as existential mathematics. The more someone tries to resolve inner contradiction through outer performance, the more clearly they display the very split they're trying to hide. Their attempt to appear whole betrays their fragmentation. In power dynamics, this literacy is everything, because beneath every social interaction, beneath every professional rivalry, beneath every human conflict, these patterns play out. Aggression reveals fear, control masks chaos, righteousness hides shadow. Perfectionism shows shame. Nietzsche saw this pattern in what he called reversals. How virtues often begin as transformed vices. How strength grows from specific weakness. How what we most strongly reject becomes what secretly drives us. But Alan Watts offers a crucial warning. Seeing these patterns shouldn't make us cynical. The point isn't to dismiss human virtue as mere compensation. Rather, it's to understand how wounds become strengths, how shadow shapes character, how our very brokenness creates who we are. This is the deeper truth about power. It belongs not to those who pretend perfection, but to those who can read the human story beneath human performance. Not to those who hide their wounds, but to those who understand how wounds shape us all. The meeting room continues its theater. Masks shine under fluorescent lights. Strengths are displayed like peacock feathers. But now you see differently. Every virtue suggests a specific vice. Here, every strength points to a particular weakness. Every mask becomes a map leading back to the wound that shaped it. Silent rooms at 3 a.m. Empty parking lots at midnight. Long drives where thoughts grow too loud to ignore. These are the moments when the masks slip, when we feel it. That nameless dread Kierkegaard recognized as our constant companion. Beneath all our careful performances, beneath every achievement and ambition, lies something universal. Everyone is afraid, not just of tangible threats, but of existence itself, the terror of being conscious. The horror of finding ourselves here, aware, mortal, uncertain of meaning. The powerful, understand this primal truth. They see how existential anxiety leaves its fingerprints on every human behavior. The driven executive climbing corporate ladders, the influencer desperately accumulating followers. The intellectual building fortresses of knowledge, the moralist clutching rigid certainties, all of them running, all of them hiding, all of them trying to outpace the same shadow. Watch closely now, see how it manifests. The CEO working 16-hour days isn't just ambitious. He's trying to stay ahead of emptiness. Every achievement, every acquisition, every expansion becomes a temporary shield against the void. The more furiously someone chases success, the more clearly you can read their terror of meaninglessness. The social media star crafting perfect moments isn't just building a brand. She is trying to prove she exists. Each like, each share, each comment becomes evidence against the fear of being nothing. Their constant visibility isn't connection. It's a defense against existential invisibility. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. Human striving isn't just about desire, it's about escape. We fill our lives with noise and motion not to reach something, but to flee something. The more elaborate someone's distractions, the deeper their dread of silence. This anxiety leaks through in predictable patterns. Overcompensation, becoming so much of something that you be nothing. Projection, seeing in others the fears you face in your self-reaction formation. Transforming terror into aggressive certainty, the moral crusader, so fierce in their convictions, so certain of right and wrong. Look closer. Their righteousness isn't strength, it's armor against uncertainty. The more someone needs absolute truth, the more clearly you can read their terror of meaninglessness. Jung recognized these as shadow patterns. What we most deny in ourselves becomes what unconsciously drives us. The fear we won't acknowledge doesn't disappear. It shapes us from below, like water carving caves in stone. Nietzsche understood this as the abyss, that moment when we glimpse the void beneath our constructions of meaning. The more elaborate someone's life philosophy, the more obviously they're trying to build bridges over nothingness. But here lies the paradox of power. True strength isn't about being fearless. It's about recognizing fear's universal presence. About seeing how it drives human behavior in endlessly predictable patterns. The need to control masks terror of chaos. The pursuit of fame masks fear of insignificance. The accumulation of wealth masks dread of vulnerability. The quest for certainty masks horror of meaninglessness. Alan Watts offered a crucial insight. What we fear is unjust death or meaninglessness. It's the illusion of separation itself. The ego, that sense of being a separate self, lives in constant terror of its own fragility. Every human defense is ultimately a defense of this illusion. Power lies not in pretending fearlessness, but in reading fierce signatures, in trembling voices discussing the future, in eyes that couldn't hold contact when mortality is mentioned, in nervous laughter covering existential questions, in the thousand subtle ways humans betray their dread. This isn't weakness. It's the human condition. This isn't failure. It's consciousness itself. The powerful don't waste energy denying this universal truth. They learn to recognize its patterns, to see how fear shapes behavior, to read the invisible architecture of human motivation. Because beneath every ambition, every conflict, every human drama, this current runs. We are conscious, we are mortal, we are afraid, and in that recognition lies not despair, but clarity. Not cynicism, but understanding. For to see fear's fingerprints is to read the most fundamental text of human nature. The night deepens. Somewhere, executives work late. Influencers post perfect moments. Moralists proclaim certainties. All of them running, all of them hiding, all of them trying to outpace the same shadow. Like a master reading ancient maps, Machiavelli traced the topography of human nature. He saw what others missed. Every fortress has its weak point. Every defense has its flaw. Every carefully constructed personality contains the seeds of its own unraveling. Watch closely now. Not the surface strength, but where it trembles. Not the displayed virtue, but where it fractures. It's not what people show, but where they break. The proud man so certain of his position, his status, his worth, Observe how he shatters under subtle humiliation. It's not direct attack, which only reinforces his armor, but the small dismissals, the slight oversights, the gentle implications of irrelevance. His strength becomes his vulnerability. The higher he builds his tower of pride, the more precisely it marks where he'll crumble. The controlling woman, orchestrating every detail, managing every variable. See how chaos undoes her. Not big disasters, which she's prepared for, but small unpredictabilities. Tiny disruptions to her perfect order. Minor challenges to her illusion of mastery. Each unexpected ripple threatens the fundamental fiction her identity requires, that life can be controlled. Jung understood these as shadow equations. Whatever quality we most strongly identify with creates its own opposite pressure point. The more someone needs to be seen as something, the more vulnerable they become to its negation. The intellectual breaks under implications of stupidity. The moral crusader cracks when their shadow leaks. The helper shatters when shown their hidden selfishness. The strong collapse when weakness becomes undeniable. This isn't about exploitation. It's about reading the psychological architecture that shapes human behavior. Like a physician mapping pressure points in the body, we learn where defenses naturally thin, where compensations naturally fail, where personas naturally crack. Schopenhauer recognized this pattern in suffering. Our greatest pains come not from random attacks, but from the inevitable collapse of our most cherished illusions. The more someone invests in a particular self-image, the more precisely they reveal where life will eventually humble them. The powerful don't create these weaknesses. They simply recognize where they naturally exist, in the gaps between who we are and who we claim to be. In the space between our persona and our shadow, in the tension between our public strength and private fear, in the fault lines running through every human psyche. Kierkegaard saw this as existential mathematics. The more someone tries to resolve inner contradiction through outer certainty, the more vulnerable they become to doubt. Their very attempt to appear unshakable reveals exactly where they'll shake. But here lies the double-edged sword of this knowledge. In mapping others' pressure points, you begin to find your own. You start to recognize your own fault lines, your own inevitable breaking points, your own carefully hidden vulnerabilities. This knowledge carries heavy responsibility. For to see clearly is to understand. We are all fortresses built on fault lines. We are all towers waiting to tremble. We are all masks concealing cracks. Nietzsche would recognize this as the abyss of self-knowledge. The more clearly you see others' weaknesses, the more impossible it becomes to deny your own. Power isn't about being invulnerable. It's about understanding vulnerability itself. Alan Watts offers a crucial insight. What we think of as our strongest points are often where we most brittle. Ego fortifies precisely where it fears collapse. Our defenses mark our deepest doubts. Like a master strategist reading terrain, notice how the aggressive crack under gentleness, how the cerebral break when emotions flood, how the distance shatter when intimacy threatens, how the perfect collapse when chaos leaks through. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. This isn't manipulation. It's recognition. For in understanding these pressure points, we understand something essential about human nature, about how we're built, about where we break, about the inevitable physics of personality. The city continues its endless performance. Masks shine under artificial lights. Fortresses appear unbreakable. But now, you see differently. Every defense suggests its own defeat. Every strength marks its own weakness. Every pressure point becomes a map, leading back to the human truth we all share. We are not invulnerable. We are not unbreakable. We are all built on fault lines. And in that recognition lies not exploitation but understanding, not power over others, but insight into the architecture of being human. Watch closely now. The fortress walls are trembling. Somewhere beneath your own defenses, pressure builds. There's a price for this sight, a cost for this clarity, a wound that comes with watching. Nietzsche understood this terrible symmetry, gazed long enough into human nature's abyss, and eventually, inevitably, it turns its gaze upon you. This is the observer's curse, the way perception becomes a mirror, reflecting back your own carefully hidden truths. At first, the power feels intoxicating. You see through the aggressive man's armor to his fear, through the perfectionist's control to her chaos, through the moral crusader's certainty to his doubt, through every mask to the wound it hides. But then something shifts. The lens turns inward. the observer becomes observed. You begin to catch yourself in the same patterns you've learned to spot in others. How your confidence trembles at certain triggers. How your kindness masks specific angers. How your strength compensates for particular fears. How your wisdom hides chosen blindness. Jung knew this territory intimately. He called it shadow recognition. That moment when we can no longer pretend our insights apply only to others, when we realize every psychological flaw we've learned to spot exists within us, waiting to be seen. Your own masks become transparent, that professional persona you've crafted so carefully. Now you see its compensations, that spiritual wisdom you've worked so hard to embody. Now you notice its strategic gaps, that emotional strength you're known for. Now you feel where it trembles. Schopenhauer would recognize this as suffering as deeper education. In learning to read pain in others, we develop an unbearable literacy about our own wounds. The very skills that give us power become the tools of our own undoing. This is both weapon and wound. Weapon because true insight requires self-knowledge. Wound because self-knowledge never leaves us comfortable. Watch your own patterns emerge. How you hide weakness beneath specific strengths. How you cover fear with particular confidences. How you mask need behind calculated indifference. Every insight into others becomes a mirror reflecting back. Kierkegaard saw this as existential inevitability. The more clearly we see through others' illusions, the more impossible it becomes to maintain our own. Our very capacity for insight becomes the lens that strips us bare. The patterns you've learned to recognize in others suddenly appear in your own behavior. The subtle compensations, the unconscious projections, the strategic blindness, the elaborate escapes. Alan Watts would offer cold comfort. What we fear in this recognition is unreally self-knowledge. But the dissolution of the illusion of a solid self, the observer's curse, shows us not just our flaws, but the fundamental fiction of the flawless observer. This is the price of perception. To see clearly is to be seen, to understand is to be understood, to recognize patterns is to become pattern recognized. Your professional armor grows transparent. You see how your confidence inflates precisely when you unsure, how your wisdom flows most eloquently around your deepest doubts. How your strength performs most convincingly when you feel weakest. This is unfailure. It's completion. This isn't weakness. It's integration. For true power requires this terrible symmetry, the capacity to see through others and the courage to be seen through. The ability to spot weakness and the strength to admit your own. The city continues its theater of masks. Power plays its eternal game. But now you stand in doubled vision, seeing and seen, observing and observed, reading patterns while becoming patterned read. This is the observer's curse. To develop a sight that eventually sees you, to gain a knowledge that finally knows you. To master a power that ultimately masters you, and in this curse lies a strange blessing. For only in seeing our own patterns can we truly understand human nature. Only in recognizing our own masks can we genuinely read others. The abyss gazes back. The observer becomes observed. Somewhere in this terrible mirror, real power begins. Power is a blade that cuts both ways. Knowledge of human nature carries weight. Seeing weakness means witnessing suffering. Schopenhauer understood this fundamental truth. Behind every mask, behind every defense, behind every human performance, lies suffering. Universal, inescapable, binding us all in its invisible web. To see weakness clearly is to see pain intimately. Watch again, but with compassionate eyes. The aggressive executive, armored in authority, carries childhood wounds. The perfect achiever, driving relentlessly forward, runs from ancient shame. The moral crusader, certain of righteousness, fights inner darkness. The social performer, always on, fears fundamental loneliness. This knowledge demands responsibility. Power without ethics becomes mere predation. Understanding without wisdom becomes manipulation. Sight without compassion becomes cruelty. The truly powerful walk this razor's edge, seeing human nature as fault lines while honoring human dignity. Reading weakness while respecting strength, understanding patterns while preserving agency. This is the ethical challenge, not whether to use this knowledge, but how to use it wisely. Not whether to see weakness, but how to see it compassionately. Jung recognized this as the shadow's deeper lesson. In seeing others' darkness, we must learn to hold both truth and mercy. To understand without exploiting, to know without crushing, to see without destroying, lies not in breaking others at their pressure points, but in understanding how pressure shapes us all, when to see and when to look away, when to speak truth and when to hold silence, when to use insight and when to let be, when to act on knowledge and when to wait. Kierkegaard would understand this as existential responsibility. The more clearly we see human nature, the more carefully we must move through human lives. Our sight becomes both gift and burden, requiring constant ethical navigation. This is the mature edge of power, not simply seeing weakness, but seeing the human story behind it, not merely reading patterns, but reading them with wisdom. The truly powerful maintain this balance. They see clearly, but act compassionately. They understand deeply, but move carefully. They know intimately, but touch gently. They read accurately, but speak wisely. For in the end, power isn't about dominance. It's about understanding. It's not about breaking others, but about seeing how we're all broken and moving through that knowledge with grace.